Well, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock, so we might as well get started. Welcome to the ninth meeting of the 40th session of the Faculty Senate of Texas A&M University. If you need a reminder of the Zoom features used in our Senate meetings, the Zoom tip sheet can be found on our website at the top of the current agenda page. At this time, please make sure your microphone is muted. Senator Andrew Klein will be monitoring the raise hands function. He will verbally identify you, then you can unmute your mic and ask your question. In fairness to others, please limit yourself to one question at a time. Senator Klein will also be monitoring the chat to convey messages as necessary, so please send any chat questions to him. We are using the registration function of Zoom to track attendance. Most visitors today have been asked to view the meeting via our live stream, but our guests and administrators who may be asked to answer questions are joining via Zoom. Visitors wishing to address the Senate may make this request by sending a chat message to Senator Klein or by using the raise hands function. Finally, if a senator wishes to offer a motion during today's meeting, please raise your hand and ask to be recognized at the appropriate time. Today, we do not have a guest speaker or announcements, which will allow us to move more quickly than usual to the Committee of the Whole, where there will be an opportunity to discuss issues of concern. We'll begin, though, with my speaker's comments. Senators, first, I know many of you are justifiably concerned about the attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, particularly those that could negatively impact the search and hiring processes that we've worked hard to expand in recent years. In the past year, the Faculty Senate has affirmed and then reaffirmed our support for DEI, and I do not believe that position has changed. Consequently, we will need to continue to speak up in support of initiatives that will help make all parts of our university better reflective of the population of Texas. Over the past few months, I've received increasing concerns about the treatment of some academic professional track faculty on campus. Their colleagues have made remarks that left the APT faculty feeling disrespected and demoralized. This is unacceptable. APT faculty are a critical part of this university and this elected body, and they should not have to prove their worth to the institution. Therefore, in an effort to bring this topic into the open for frank discussion and hopefully some recommendations for improvement, I'm going to appoint a Senate task force on collegiality. I will be looking for equal numbers of tenured and APT senators to serve on this committee and will ask them for suggestions that we can take forward. If you haven't looked at the latest MGT report, this one on Galveston, I suggest you take a look at it. Not only does it potentially impact Galveston significantly, but it also impacts College Station in recommendations such as moving oceanography from the main campus to Galveston. Please take a look at it and submit comments through the portal by the deadline. You have another 10 days or so to do that. I and the executive committee have heard from a number of engineering faculty who were concerned about the percentage of faculty on the search committee for a new dean and vice chancellor of engineering. After the appointment of system representatives and alumni, faculty made up well under half of the committee, and some faculty feared that would diminish the academic voice in the process. Although system regulations do not require a majority faculty membership on the committee, at the behest of the EC, I asked Chancellor Sharp on Friday to consider expanding the committee to include several more faculty members. His response over the weekend, in further discussion with our administration, has left me hopeful that this will occur. And speaking of searches, I've been asked repeatedly in the past couple of weeks if the search for a permanent provost is going to be a transparent and honest one. I want to say unequivocally that I would not have accepted the role of co-chair of the search committee if I had any reason to doubt the integrity of this search. I believe the co-chair, Vice President Anand, and the entire committee are equally committed to the integrity of this search. If you know of someone within the A&M system who you think should be considered, I encourage you to nominate them by sending their names to provostsearch@tamu.edu. Thank you. We'll move on now to approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the January 23rd meeting minutes found in attachment B? Clint, I see your hand up.
Right. When I clicked on that link yesterday and maybe the day before, nothing came up. So I'll be ratifying.
None of the links worked.
Well, in that case, since no one has had a chance to see the minutes, we'll delay approval of the minutes to our March meeting. So none of the other links worked for the consent agenda either?
Not for me.
No.
I was able to get the stuff at the bottom, those rules, whatever things.
But none of the attachments clicked through. They wanted something local on my machine, which didn't exist.
Okay. Clearly some problem has occurred. So in that case, I think we probably should delay approval of the consent agenda if no one has been able. Well, I see others noting that links worked. So I am not sure.
For me, I think it was only the minutes that I could not see.
Okay. So were most of you able to access the consent agenda?
The link to the courses, individual links to the courses work.
So are we comfortable in approving the consent agenda, or do you want to put it off for a month?
Dale, the consent agenda is not in an attachment, I believe.
Is it? It's just straight on the agenda. Yeah. So we should be able to do, so those, did anybody have any problem with the links for the individual courses?
Those were fine. It was just attachments B, C, D1, D2, and D3.
Okay. In that case, then let's go ahead with the consent agenda. Are there any questions or concerns on the February 13th consent agenda? Hearing none, I declare the consent agenda approved as submitted. Were you able to reach attachment C?
No.
Okay, then.
Dale, you can get to the individual courses that are on attachment C.
That's right. Yeah.
Because they're listed separately. So attachment C is simply those courses, correct? And the D attachments are also working.
Okay. So if we have no objection, then I will go ahead and ask if there are questions or concerns for the Core Curriculum Council report. Hearing none, I declare the report approved as submitted. Now moving on to other business where those attachments D1 through D3 are, those are actually informational items this month. They're basically cleaning up title changes following the management reorganization. We'll vote on those proposed bylaws changes at our March meeting. And we'll make sure that there are active links so that anyone can look at them. But I don't believe there's any issue there. Clint?
Dale,
Yes, Clint.
I think the one, it's on rules and regs and whatever, it talks about representatives of the president's office and the provost and vice president and so forth. And then it never really says who's chairing that committee. And it talks about a representative from the president's office. And then it says all except the members of the president's, those from the president's office. And I think that probably will need to be clarified before the actual vote.
Okay, I'll ask our bylaws committee to take another look at that. Blanca?
Yes, I would suggest that the titles are reviewed because I don't think that some of those titles exist. At least I could not find them on the websites.
It was my understanding that that's what they had done, is cleaned it up based on the reorganization. But if there are some really specific ones, we should take another look at that.
Yeah,
I
for
agree.
example,
I agree with you.
one of them says Dean of Graduate Studies. It would be Dean of Graduate and Professional Studies or grad and professional school. So we should use the titles as they are.
Yes. We'll send that back for some revision.
And I have one more that I don't know if that's a problem or not, but in the revisions to the Medical Science Library Council that is eliminated, the new revision and the track changes do not match. The track changes still includes the Medical Science Library Council.
I will have to go back and look at that again. I will, what I will do in this case is ask bylaws to take another look at it, and then we'll put a revised version online for informational purposes in March, and we'll vote in April. So there's plenty of time for people to actually take a look at the revised bylaws that come forward. So that should wrap up Rajesh?
Just a quick clarification. So is Blanca's position that there's only going to be one library council? Or that there would be a university and then a medical sciences for the vet school and med school and other?
The way I read it originally, there were going to be two, that it was just fixing the position names and all with with that, but that there would still be a med school council, but I could be mistaken. Perhaps I read it incorrectly.
That's what I mean, I'm hoping that there will be a one that's more focused on medical literature.
Yeah, I don't believe there was any effort to eliminate any of these, but simply to try and realign them with the positions that exist now. For example, the title of the provost is changed. So everywhere that appears in things like the council, we need to fix it. Blanca?
The first page on that document says new revisions, Medical Science Library Council eliminated.
Well, we'll get even further clarification.
And there is one more thing, if I may. If the revisions that are on track changes stand, I would suggest that the VP for the HSC is not the one that appoints the faculty for the colleges over there, that it follows the same process as for any other college. Because these bylaws are from when the HSC was separate from the university.
Clearly, we need to ask bylaws to take another look at this, and we'll do that.
Dale, Senator Hale has his hand raised.
Yeah, Speaker Rice, are we still in the new business section of the agenda?
Well, we are wrapping up because that was the bylaws discussion that people were raising their hands on.
Then can I move the following motion? I'll put it in the chat. Here it is. I'll just read the whereas pieces. I'm sorry, the be it resolved that pieces. Number one, be it resolved, the faculty senate request a raise pool of no less than 6% for the coming evaluation and raise cycle. Two, be it resolved that the faculty senate request the Texas A&M Technology Services pull those syllabi automatically for House Bill 2504 purposes, as opposed to the current method of faculty pushing them manually. Three, be it resolved that the faculty senate request 4 course releases per academic year for the speaker and 2 course releases per academic year for the speaker-elect and 2 course releases per academic year for the secretary. And 4, be it resolved that the faculty senate request Texas A&M Technology Services pull attendance/meaningful interaction data from those courses that use Canvas for attendance certification purposes, as opposed to the current method of faculty pushing attendance/meaningful interaction data. For first read.
Yeah, you're not asking for it to go on as an emergency item. You are submitting this for consideration for a future meeting.
No, for March. This is first read.
Senator Price?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's the asking for specific numbers, I don't think is necessarily helpful, because it could be different for different people. And then even if the raise pool, it depends on how it gets distributed to different people. The other thing is that when you talk the syllabi, not everybody has them on Canvas. And so
I note that for those that do.
No, I know. And I understand. I mean, to put that information out there to make the connection, I totally get what you're saying. I don't think this necessarily needs to be a resolution. It should just be something that we talk to them about. But I don't know that the resolution will help in that, because the resolution, I mean, having a discussion and talking to IT about these things, if it's something that we can do, I don't see that they would be opposed to it, but I just don't see that this needs to be a resolution necessarily. And the same thing with the offload, because it really depends on the speaker. The speaker is supposed to get an offload, but it depends on what that is. You know, for course release depends on how many the people are teaching. So it's really, again, when you start putting numbers in there, then it doesn't make it relevant to every single person. So again, and with Canvas, depending on how the people do, I don't have a disagreement with that. But again, it depends on whether the law will allow us that, because it may be that they want the faculty member to be the person responsible for making sure that this has happened, not what shows up on Canvas, because we're taking responsibility for being true. So I'm not disagreeing with the points that you have. I just don't think that a resolution with specific numbers in there are going to be very helpful, because they're not going to be applicable in every situation.
I hear you. The first one says no less than 6%. That's not a specific number. That's 6% or more. And I've done number 4 before. You have to have meaningful interaction. That's the law. Meaningful action can be a syllabus quiz. And
yes, but my point is the faculty member is being asked to be the person responsible for certifying, not calling it. So again, I think these are things that are great charges to have the Senate talk to the different committees about.
But Angie, are we not in the discussion part? I mean, Trevor's putting a motion on the floor. I think there has to be something that happens before we have discussion. Am I not right? Because that's what we're trying to do here, is discuss the motion. Could the parliamentarian weigh in on that?
I can weigh in on that, Adam. It's not an official motion at this point.
first read.
Trevor has put it out there for consideration. We're not voting on it today, so it would not. So we wouldn't have it as, in a sense, he has now made the motion, we'll have discussion and then vote. But I thought that it was fair, if there were people who wanted to say something, not to shut that off.
Well, I second the motion, if that helps.
That does.
Senator Haney.
Thank you, Speaker Rice. I move that the motion be tabled to give the senators full time to read and consider the proposal. And
that's what first read means.
I'm sorry?
That's what first read means. We don't table
Yeah,
it. First read means it comes back again.
No, I know, but for right now, we're getting into the actual discussion of the resolution, and I don't know that that's appropriate at this time. It should come back for a full discussion on the next meeting, and that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, that was kind of my point too, that this isn't the time for discussion, right? So the motion's on the floor, and then we're going to discuss it next time. Is that
It's actually not on the floor, just to be clear. So I'm happy to end the discussion right now with it. And
so what happens now?
Now, I think there will be a discussion about the appropriate way to bring this back, or to continue the discussion at a later meeting. So at this point, that wraps up the business portion of the meeting, and I would invite Speaker-elect Hammond to take us into the committee of the whole.
Thank you, Speaker Rice. I want to begin by asking if there are any positive actions or items of concern that are occurring on campus related to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. Jorge?
Yes, I think most of you know that the governor has said something about some of these issues about diversity and things like that. I think he has instructed the state agencies not to consider diversity in hiring. I haven't heard anything from the university. I don't know what is the position of the university, I don't know if the university is going to advocate a specific position. I just want to know what the university position is with respect to that directive that I think is going to be effective soon. I don't know when. Can someone comment on that? Has been on the media, has been on the press for the last week or so. And I can post the link through, the information through the chat.
I only saw one statement that the A&M released in that same article that I read, where the governor, issued the statement. It said, I think A&M said that we will be happy to follow all the state and federal regulations to that response to that particular statement from the governor. That's all I saw. And I think I have that link if you guys want to look at it.
Any other
Yes,
response?
that's the one. That's the one.
I don't see any other hands raised or anything in the chat that's not public.
Alan, did you want to comment at all? I see that you're on here.
Yeah, I think the direction of most of what I've read in the media has to do with requiring diversity statements and how those are actually used by committees. And I think that NK is directed some of the searches that are underway, that if it's already out there, that we would, not pull that requirement back in terms of change the way we're doing the search. But and new searches that get launched, that kind of a requirement obviously would go against the state, the governor's directive, I guess I should say. And that leaves us the challenge of how do we, assess applicants, approach to philosophy about practice of the collegiality and welcoming and inclusiveness that is part of what diversity is about. And, we certainly don't take somebody's race or gender into consideration when we make those hiring decisions. It's all a part of are they, like I said before, it's part of how we assess their collegiality and being a member of the faculty community and those kinds of things. And so our challenge is how do we assess those in the absence of that kind of a diversity statement where somebody is able to make those pronouncements quite clear, and if they offer those kinds of information separate from a diversity statement, how the committee considers those or doesn't consider those in light of the state laws and federal laws that govern that kind of thing. So it is a challenge, and I think NK is trying to advise searches that are ongoing about how to do that in the absence of a diversity statement like that we have very commonly used. So it's the university's in a challenging situation right now in terms of being able to address some of these in while the session's going on, while we're so reliant on lots of other ways that we interact with the state government that we're part of. So it's a challenge for sure, but it doesn't really diminish the commitment and the support and the efforts that are underway in lots of ways across the university. It's not just the Office of Diversity or diversity statements. There's a lot that we do that as a community, as an A&M community, to make it a more welcoming and inclusive place to live and work and learn and all of those kinds of things. So we just have to find the ways to do that are compliant with the laws, but still make it that welcoming place that we want it to be. So
Thank you, Alan. And yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with the inclusivity is our goal, which means every single person, including white men, of course, so we have to be inclusive for everybody. And yes, and definitely we always hire based on merit. How else could you do it any other way? Annie.
Well, I think the point of the diversity statement has been misconstrued generally, that in the diversity statement, we are not looking, or nor do we use information where the person describes their own ethnicity or identity. We're looking for actual evidence. It's an evidence-based approach to the work that the person has done. Therefore, it is not necessary that we have a diversity statement per se to do the work if we ask for the candidate to reflect on that work in their teaching and research statements.
I think the chancellor last month, I guess it was James Hallmark that provided some context after the chancellor's comments about this, was much of the universities and the system's work in this space, to the question someone asked a moment ago about with the university having a statement on it. Much of the work has been around trying to help people understand what diversity is, what the diversity effort is in terms of diversity statements that Annie was just talking about, helping people understand what's actually in that. It's not talking about their own diversity, but it's talking about aspects of how that engages in their qualifications for a position, or how their experience that they might bring to a position. So it's a bit of I think what our approach has been as a system and as an institution, is help people understand what that whole area of work is. Like you said, the diversity statements have been largely misconstrued, but there may be examples of instances where they have either been used as a reason to exclude somebody, or have disclosed aspects of a person's identity that maybe they weren't intended to, but that's not what the purpose is, like Annie was just saying.
Adam.
Yes, so I don't know if either Annie or Alan have read the critiques of diversity statements by organizations such as the Alliance for Academic Freedom and the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, which has been recently renamed. The E no longer stands for education, now stands for expression. And they have argued that diversity statements are the equivalent to political litmus tests. And actually I know that our current STRIDE training encourages departments to use the Berkeley rubric to evaluate diversity statements. And it's particularly the Berkeley rubric that has been criticized as a political litmus test. So are we now saying that we're no longer going to do that? Is that no longer going to be the official position of the university, that we no longer have these diversity statements evaluated according to the Berkeley rubric? And Annie, I got a question for you. You say we want to evaluate candidates' work outside the diversity statements. Is that going to be according to the Berkeley rubric or something else? I'm curious.
You make good points, Adam, and I would like what I just said a moment ago, that there are probably some instances and examples of where some of these kind of statements maybe were perhaps inappropriately used to exclude some people, or where were misconstrued or whatever. But I wasn't really trying to make any kind of an official position statement with what I just said. I was just kind of describing, as was Annie, I think, what the purpose of those are, not necessarily how they're always used for everything. So I wasn't making a position statement about the university. So, but your point, you make a very good point in terms of, that they have sometimes been used as litmus tests.
Well, FIRE claims that that's how they're usually used. Same with the Alliance for Academic Freedom, just so you know.
Okay, good point.
NK?
Yeah, both Speaker Rice and I underwent training for faculty hiring last week. And I do not recall the phrase Berkeley rubric anytime during that 120 minutes of training. So that is not there. And going forward, the diversity statement will be optional, and diversity includes differently abled people, veterans, and people who need special access and everything. No more comments. Thank you.
Angie?
I was just looking for, just like Senator Carly Miles said, the sources for that, Adam, it'd be very helpful. Thank you.
I agree. Katerina?
I happen to be on the STRIDE workshop committee, and there's nothing in the handbook that I remember or recall teaching to anyone about a Berkeley rubric.
It's in the appendix on diversity statements. I'll post a link shortly.
And Andrew, were there any questions in the chat?
Yes, there was a question in the chat that says, are we going to discuss House Bill 1006, which would effectively outlaw the use of state funds for most any DEI initiatives ranging from education programs to hiring to ...
Does anybody want to respond to that before we call on Jorge?
We have not received any further instructions from either President's office or from the OGC. So until then, we are in standby mode.
Thank you, NK. Jorge?
Yes, what is the status of the ACES Plus program? Is it still active? Is it on hold? What's going on? I'm just asking.
Yeah, Annie can give further information. We revised it, and the revised announcement was distributed. So as of now, it is still active, but a revised ACES Plus program.
Yes, applications are open for ACES Plus program at this time.
Any other questions related to DEI or A or comments? And nothing more from you, Andrew?
No.
Okay. So moving on to general items. Is there any business for the committee of the whole? Blanca.
Actually, I was trying to find my hand. Raise my hand. NK just indicated that it was distributed, the new document for the ACES Plus program. Whom was it distributed to? Because I have not seen it.
We distributed to the all the deans, and the deans are supposed to distribute it to. I'll remind them tomorrow, or on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
So again, now finally moving on to general items. Is there any business for the committee of the whole? Jorge?
Yes, I heard Dale saying earlier that his suggestion about the dean search in the College of Engineering is to increase the membership, to have more members. The committee right now has 29 members. So adding more members to me doesn't make too much sense. But the most fundamental question I have is, why do we have more non-faculty members than faculty members in that committee to begin with? What happened? That's kind of rare, right? Do we have an answer for that question?
Oh, if you would like me to answer that, Tracy.
I mean, let me ask this question a different way. Was that done by design, on purpose, to minimize the voice of the faculty? That's my basic question.
I do not believe it was the aim of the system to minimize the voice of the faculty. I think that what happened here was President Banks sent forward the names who were elected by the College of Engineering, and people were appointed to the committee, but at the same time, because this is one of the vice chancellor positions, there were members of the Board of Regents, members of the Chancellor's Cabinet, and then some other constituent groups, such as alumni. And by the time that those people were added, that really ended up reducing the faculty as are defined in our rules down to roughly a third of the membership. And so there were a number of people who not only asked me, but asked others on the EC to at least see if we couldn't rectify that to some degree. And I think that at least adding a few additional faculty would both reassure people that the faculty voice, that there was not an active process to try and minimize it and recognize the value of it.
Senator Falvo?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to take a second in the committee of a whole to make sure that I brought up that MGT report as it was published related to Galveston. I know that it is something that we have all been thinking a lot about down on the Galveston campus. And I understand that it might not be something that folks are thinking a lot about up at the College Station campus. Not sure how to get a pulse on that exactly, but as Dale did mention earlier, this report would affect all of us in various ways, including but not limited to the fact that it really is encouraging a lot of professors to seek joint appointments, which would require changes in the departments they're moving into. So it's definitely something that I would ask you all to look at. I also see a very a scary trend to devalue the liberal arts based on what is in the MGT report. It is extremely unclear what effect it will have, indeed what effect it intends to have. But right now it suggests disbanding, or at least it indicates that it might disband liberal studies, thinking that it is university studies. So not so much of an understanding of what those are. So if you haven't read the MGT report for Galveston, please do. It has some fairly not particularly to the present ideas on DEI. So it's very much so worth checking out, and I would really ask that you do. I also remember that as a faculty senate, we wanted to support our colleagues in Qatar, and this has some serious ramifications for your colleagues in Galveston. So please make sure that you read the report and put your feedback during that feedback period.
Senator Haney. You're muted.
There we go. Thank you, Tracy. Building on what Catherine has said, yes, this has some impacts not only for Galveston, but also for College Station with the calling on of joint appointments and the proposed move of oceanography down to the island. To that extent, myself and Senator Hammond have been asked to serve on the Operations Assessment Committee, which is looking at all of the operational departments, not the academic departments, but the operational side of the university, to see if there are still areas in which we can improve and where MGT may have succeeded in compliance with the College Station version of MGT, and try to address any problems that still persist. I'm having some conversations right now with Greg Hartman and Brad Brown on my part of the representing and integrating and strengthening the branch or satellite campuses coordination with College Station. And if you read the MGT report for Galveston, it calls for more centralization and more streamlining of those processes. But Senator Hammond and I feel that it's important to update the Senate on what's going on. So when you hear that there's an operations assessment committee, we are your representatives on there. And I'll defer to Senator Hammond.
Yeah, and so is Senator Holliday. She also is a representative from the Faculty Senate. And so just to give you a little idea of what is going on, we're going to every other week, we're going to be looking at one or two items from the VPR report, seeing what data needs to be gathered, what issues still arise, what good things have happened, and really trying to get a good idea of where we've gone. And just to so far we're had only our introductory meeting. We're going to have our next meeting Thursday, and that meeting will be with facilities and now I'm blanking.
No, IT. Facility,
IT and facilities.
It was pushed off till March. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so for each of these, they ask us to collect questions, additional questions to send out. For the first group, I actually interviewed about 40 or 50 professors and shared a document with them to try to get some feedback from them. If you share any feedback with me, I will try to collate it, and I will, whenever I share it in a personal email of mine, so there's no track changes or anything. Everything is confidential. And of course, I always try to make it so that we're moving forward, not trying to move backwards. But the next one, if you want to send me, I have to send comments tonight about human resources. So if you put any direct message to me in the chat, I'll make sure to get them included on, or you can send me an email, and I'll collate them together to make sure that people's thoughts are here for those. Rajesh, sorry, Senator Miranda.
All the same. So this is also an issue with relation to centralization in this case of facilities. We at the School of Medicine have lost almost all of the people who used to walk around the building and check if there were lights out or things like that and replace them without being asked to. And now it's gotten to be really difficult with trying to get new equipment installed. For example, there's a new faculty member who has had a boxed water system sitting in their lab for months. They haven't been able to get that installed. It requires rewiring of electricity and some water system inputs and such. And this is kind of a thing that's percolating through at least our school, is that there's a massive backlog of just servicing of the building and keeping things running, allowing faculty to actually have productive research programs and such. So just another area where centralization seems to be having kind of an opposite effect than may have been intended.
Great, thank you. Adam, sorry, Senator Kolasinski.
That's fine. You can call me Adam. I have no pretense about my title or my degree. I'm going to say that the effects of centralization were predicted. This is what happens when you centralize large organizations. Everything becomes bureaucratic and top down, and things work less efficiently. That's why communism doesn't work. That's why central planning doesn't work. This was all obvious to those of us who studied these things. But anyway, just letting everyone know that.
Senator Banerjee.
Yeah, I would like to point out one personal hurdle I have been facing with centralization. I think our IT policies changed. Our previous IT servers, as I understand it, was using Google servers, so we had an unlimited inbox. I don't know what changes happened. All of a sudden, I started getting emails that my inbox was full and that I exceeded the quota. I didn't even know that I had a quota. And then on Thursday, my outbox stopped working. And that created a lot of chaos, in terms of things that I have to manage between my research, teaching, and surveys. And this is totally uncalled for. I don't know what's going on with our IT services. Somebody needs to take a look. I don't know who to talk to about this.
So I will tell you that the Gmail was one of the items that did come up repeatedly and definitely was on my list of questions that I sent last week. So, and also for people here, Senator Banerjee is also on the committee as well. So we actually have 4 people from here.
But all I'm trying to say is, can somebody take a look at it and act on it quickly? I mean, I don't want to face the situation that again, my email stops working just because that arbitrary quota, exceeded. And I didn't even know there was a quota.
Senator Klein?
I'll just add a bit. I know it's been brought up here before that there are certain buildings that elevators are not very fully functional. Blocker has come to mind. Though we don't have as many students, one of the elevators in O&M has been down for probably over a month. And I will also say this, some of the signs that get put up to alert people to these problems, such as please dial this number if the elevator stops working when you're in it, do not go very far to showing that we are a top-notch R1 university. So there's, we don't look very good either.
Thank you. Senator Tagg?
So I'd like to know if there's someone who can speak to the resources that are being provided to disability resources. I think everyone got the email about the 3-day rule for that. And from one of the largest programs that has students utilizing that facility, scheduling exams in the testing center has become, for students and faculty, it's a potluck sometimes, and it's definitely first come, first serve. And it just seems like it's really gotten out of hand. We've had students who have scheduled exams over there and then been told there's no seats for them. And so then we're left to try to figure out how we're going to accommodate the student on our set by ourselves. And that may be fine if you have a class with 25 students or whatever, but when you start ratcheting that number up to 300, 400, 600 in a class section, this starts to become prohibitive. And I really worry about student success and what our students are experiencing when just trying to get their accommodations met. And it really concerns me. The number of students who require accommodations continues to climb. I think we're somewhere between 5 and 10%. And in our program, just in 111 alone, that's 2,500 students for one exam for the program. And that's not including all of their, all their other courses that they're going to have to do that. So I just kind of want to raise it as a increasing concern. I don't expect anything to happen tomorrow, but I would appreciate, having that looked at, because they're definitely struggling over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hale.
Just want to echo Professor Tagg's comments. Yeah, I teach large sections of 300 and 400 each. I have 800 students. A lot of them require disability services, and they are under-resourced and underfunded. To that end, I've submitted a proposal to my new dean, Dean Sharp, to open up a testing center here at the May School of Business. For instance, University of Central Florida has about a dozen of them across campus where you go in, you swipe your ID, and they say, what do you want, your economics quiz or your marketing midterm? They say marketing midterm, go to computer 33, done.
Great idea. I like that. Alan, did you want to respond to Senator Hale or?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a working group right now that's working on disability services, how it's best structured and housed and resourced. And when I moved into this role, that was one of the offices I went and visited to get it, just to learn more about. I knew what went on there from my faculty time, but to see how that's grown since then and what their needs are, and looked at some of the data that they provided about how we relate to some other peer institutions and that kind of thing. And so there's a working group right now. It's led by Don Russell in engineering, but Tim Scott, I think, is on the Zoom here somewhere. And Christy Orr and some others are on that working group, and they're looking at all those kinds of things. And I don't really know when the report is due. Tim, you might be able to provide that information, but these are all the kinds of things they're looking at, so we can get that right size, because you are absolutely right. We are head and shoulders above our SEC peers, at least, in terms of the demand, the proportion of our student body that uses those services. So we need to make sure that they're adequate and appropriate.
Yeah, Alan, I think Don Russell is wanting to have that by the end of the term. It's also coinciding with an external review of disability services as well.
And Dan, did you want to say something? Collins?
Oh, I was just going to echo with Trevor and Andy. I talked to a lot of the different faculty, and I'm starting to even hear it from the sense from the student of, gosh, when I take exams at the actual center itself, it makes me more angsty than if I were to take it. And I know a lot of individuals who would say, I'd rather take it with you, but we don't have the resources and the time and all of that. So I appreciate Dr. Sams and Tim Scott taking a look at that.
Great. Senator Haney?
Yes, Academic Affairs was going to hear from Study Abroad, and we're still investigating that. However, we got apparently we got stood up, and I haven't heard anything back from Sarah Pattinson. I guess those of you on College Station, if you could do a wellness check on Study Abroad, because they have completely fallen off the radar and are not responding to any emails. So I don't know what's going on over there, but we're still trying to have that discussion about how we can improve accessibility to education abroad and study abroad programs. So I just wanted to bring the Senate's attention that we're still focusing on that, and hopefully I'll get some sort of response. If I keep going down the email list, eventually, hopefully someone will respond to me. Thanks.
Thank you. And just one last question. You guys gave a lot of stuff about facilities and disability. The questions for human resources are due tonight. So if anybody has any comments about that, it would be helpful. Katerina, Senator Laporte.
Oh, hi. Mine just a point of clarification and wanting to know what the process is. When a student, and there's been lots of them, report to you that they have COVID, and the website, the COVID website actually states that they should report it to their professor. My question, as a professor in a class with 100+ students who have been now exposed to COVID, what are we meant to do with that information? Are we just meant to make accommodations for the students, or are we meant to do something with that information?
Tim Scott, that might be.
I was waiting for Provost Sams to speak, but I will say, Katrina, is that in some ways we are managing COVID like we do the flu. And so you are not meant to do anything. The student is telling you that they're too ill to come to class. You let them isolate or get medical help as need be, and then when they're clear of symptoms, they can return. That's the best advice I have. I don't know if Alan has a different advice or not.
No, I think that's perfectly right. I don't think there's anything special that you're supposed to do with that piece of information. We're managing this just like we are the flu and other kinds of respiratory illnesses like that. And there are the requests for absences and excuses from students, and those as they come in. The AOC deans are kind of watching those in the different colleges and schools to make sure there's not kind of abuse of that as students need to have excuses for COVID. Just so you know that there's an additional layer that's looking at that.
Senator Rao.
I had a quick question. You said something about a deadline for HR. What is that deadline? Maybe I missed something. Was it?
So Adam had mentioned that there are 4 of us that are on a committee to evaluate the MGT report path forward in the last 18 months of change, and we every 2 weeks, we discuss a different part of the MGT report, and we're asked to send some questions in advance so that we can help steer the agenda and make sure that it focuses on things that are important to the faculty.
So we send that to you?
You can send them to me. They just told the people on the committee to send it, and I've been just whenever I talk with people, I collate whatever people say and provide it in an anonymous way. Just so that people know what things people are talking about, and always in a constructive, productive way so we can find a solution.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Tracy, I just have to say, as far as the facilities and some of the shared service kind of things, the deans and the department heads, and I would go so far as to say, I think that this probably would apply to just about anybody. If you're having a problem with something, it's probably, you know, if your department head or your dean, they've been instructed to contact the vice president of that particular division just directly. And they've got 48 hours that they're supposed to respond and fix it. And so whether it's something like an elevator or whatever we've been talking about, there's been that kind of directive to be responsive in these kinds of things. So if you've got a problem, you know, make sure your department head knows about it, and then they need to call the vice president directly or send them an email or something, and they've got a clock that starts ticking until they can respond. So.
That's excellent. Thank you, Ellen. I have also noticed that they've been quite responsive if you actually communicate with them. NK, you're up.
Yeah, if somebody can send an invitation to Mr. Ed Pearson, CIO, he will jump onto the Senate listing to answer the question on the Gmail issue.
Oh, great. Senator Haney?
Hi, I just wanted to respond to Dr. Sam's comment. Here at Galveston, we had surplus office furniture that sat in our hallway for 5 months, and the department head contacted facilities many times, and it didn't get corrected until our chief academic officer, Dr. Debbie Thomas, actually made a phone call. And so department heads may be making those calls. They're not being acted upon, and they're not being responded to. So that's something that facilities needs to respond to. I'm just saying we've had the experience of contacting them. Department heads have done their part, and we're still not getting responsiveness from facilities, with all due respect.
There were a number of, I'll just say early in the fall, there were a number of stories like this where facilities wasn't as responsive as they needed to be. And so there have been some additional people brought into the office to help manage those kinds of requests. And the deans were made aware of Les Williams is one in particular that was brought in to be really the kind of the interface for all of this. But Kobe Whitehead, the chief of staff and in that VP's office, also responds to a lot of those kinds of questions. So this is something that all came about probably in mid-November, maybe December. So it's been a fairly recent addition into that staff as they tried to respond or increase their responsiveness in light of this mandate to have a 48-hour response. So hopefully things have improved, and that didn't happen in December or January, but you know, your issue with the furniture and the halls and stuff. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Janice, you're up.
So as I asked in the chat, for concern with HR, being able to hire only twice a month has been a problem for the math department. And, you know, if somebody leaves, we need to be a little more nimble in replacing them. And I was on the HR one-stop task force, and there was a general consensus. I was the only faculty member on that one, but the people at transportation is like, if a bus driver leaves, we can't wait 2 weeks. So perhaps they can consider hiring more frequently than twice a month.
I was in a meeting this morning with Damon Sladen, And we were talking about a unique operation that the university has in one of its schools that has just that kind of a situation where they have occasionally have needs to have somebody hired outside of those 2 hiring dates, and they can do that. It's just not the normal way to do things. So they do have in certain situations or with justification, they can hire people outside those 2 days. They just need to know about it.
And Janice, I do have those 2 things already on my list of at least providing more awareness. That seems like. Jorge.
Yes, about the hiring situation, about hiring twice a month. It's more than that. It's not just 2 weeks, because at least in my department, they set a deadline for, so if you want to hire at the end of the month, for instance, it's not like the deadline is 2 days before the deadline. So it's an internal deadline. So for us, it's about 5 weeks or so before we can bring someone on board. It takes a long time. Even a student worker to be a grader takes me a whole month to bring someone on board, because there are deadlines over deadlines, right? And I don't understand the logic behind, putting 2 set dates per month when we need to hire people on the fly. I think maybe the solution is this: give as many responsibilities to the departments as possible, like we used to do. Now everything is centralized and it takes longer. Many universities do that, have that model. They make lots of decisions at the local level about budgets and things like that, and they can really go fast. Now everything needs to go through the system and it takes forever. That's my point.
Adam?
Yeah, so back when the whole centralization plan was being discussed, the Mays Business School was commissioned with writing a report on matrix organizations, and what we recommended was that the local managers and in the departments and in the colleges maintain most of the day-to-day authority on things, and that you should only centralize to the extent that there should be a sort of a uniform policies and procedures, but the day-to-day responsibility should be at the local management level, just as Jorge recommended. It looks like, though, all our recommendations were ignored, which is kind of interesting, but anyway, just putting that out there.
NK? You're muted.
Ed is still waiting for the link. So I'm trying to send the link to him now, see if my link works. Maybe mine is not allowed to be transferred to someone else. So.
Which link are we talking about?
The Senate link, so that he can jump onto the.
Ed Pearson is waiting to participate in the meeting so he can respond to questions.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for a link.
Can you help with that?
Give me a second, I'll get the link.
Thank you, Andrew.
I sent it, but I don't know whether mine will work for him or not. So.
Okay, Senator Falvo, while they're doing that.
Thank you, Senator Hammond. I just want to respond to Senator Kolasinski's point and just remind people that the MGT report is offering right now a window of feedback, and I really would appreciate it if you put that feedback in for the formal MGT report. We all have had concerns with centralization, but a large part of the MGT report, re-Galveston, is about centralization and about what will be centralized, even as far as to suggest that certain academic departments are centralized. So it would be really helpful if you could put that feedback into their report. I know that it's not, I'm sure that you put the feedback into the initial MGT report, but just a reminder that it is another feedback period and another report, and it would be really helpful to have your expertise in that.
Great. Yes, Galveston comes up for each of the things. So very much for, centralization across all the things, it seems. And we have Adam, who is in Galveston. So we've got a voice from Galveston, on that committee. So since obviously I'm not experiencing that since I'm in College Station. Other questions? Oh, good. We have Ed Pearson here.
Yes, I'm on.
Great.
What can I do for you?
There were several questions that have come up that people are, I guess the main thing was the Gmail thing. Deb, do you want to speak again of what you were talking before?
Yeah, I think, I guess a year ago, I was under the impression that we have unlimited inboxes. But then all of a sudden, I started getting emails that my inbox is full, and I was desperately trying to save a sinking ship, plugging loopholes and trying to save my emails to archive in a desperate manner. And my inbox was hanging up every time I was trying to shift all my emails in my inbox to archive. And then all of a sudden, my email stopped working, and my email started getting stuck in Outbox on Thursday last week. And I don't know what happened to our infrastructure, because I never faced this issue in a long time. I remember when I joined Texas A&M in 2005, we used to have a limited inbox, but after that, my impression was we went to an unlimited inbox, and then all of a sudden we have a limited quota, which is actually affecting our productivity. So I'm wondering if there is any way we can go back to those Gmail sort of configuration where you don't have to worry about your, quota in your inbox.
So let me give you a little bit of background. One, I would like to have the team work with you individually to look at your situation. Google, who runs Gmail, made a change about 3 years ago where they had decided that giving out unlimited free storage to everyone was a challenge, because there were always individuals that needed petabytes of storage versus their normal customers. So they announced quite a while back that they were moving to a limited for fee additional storage model. So I'd have to have the team look at your individual account and see where it is at. A&M pays for a lot of storage with Google, but they have begun to implement a pay for use model. Many universities are running into this problem out there because higher ed took great advantage of an unlimited free storage environment. But yeah, Google has made a change in their business model to drive revenue out of their Gmail platform for storage. But I can have the team work with you individually and see if there's a way to get your particular environment back to use. I'm sure there is. But yes, overall, we have been working with them to understand what that cost looks like. But it could very well, for A&M and the size we're at, if we don't find ways to work within this, we anticipate a potential 6 to 7 figure cost coming from Google at some point.
So I did reach out to your team, and they set up an archive, I guess an online archive for me. But every time I'm selecting my emails and trying to transfer it to archive, my email is hanging.
So let me get someone to swing by your office at your convenience and work with you on it and see why that is. Like I said, most of our customers out there have an average use, if you will, but we do have customers that are pushing 10, 15, 20 times what everyone else is doing. So let me find out where it's at. We had individuals historically at A&M that used it for file backup, right? And so they dumped everything into email to use it as file backup. That slows their system down significantly and makes it harder for everything else to support it because you have these outliers. But let me have someone get hold of you and work with you on why that archiving is not working correctly.
I mean, I'm trying to, but looks like I only have to select like 50 emails at a time to do it. I cannot do a select control all and do it. If I do that, it's hanging up. But doing 50 emails at a time
is not practical.
It's not practical, essentially.
Right.
And not only that, let's assume a faculty member would work 20, 30 years at A&M, the volume of email is only going to increase with time. And particularly faculty members who are teaching large classes. For example, I teach a lab class with 250 students, 14 to 16 sections, 5 TAs, my volume of emails will be pretty high. And then on top of it, include my activities in Faculty Senate or CPI. I would probably have more than your average volume of email use. So I don't really know how to solve and tackle this problem,
Well, part of the way we do that is through the archiving, and no, sir, we don't expect you to archive in groups of 10 or 15 emails. So there's bulk archiving available, and we can work with you to write rule sets that will look back through your environment. The benefit from this is severalfold. One, you will obviously get an opportunity to speed up your system because it won't try to index and maintain millions of records. That has an advantage to you. And then the other side is from a storage point of view. But yeah, we can work with you to get this done. We do it all the time. But the vendors are running into they were very generous, especially in higher ed, to give out the free to everyone. Well, now that they've got a lot of folks with millions and billions of records, they're starting to find a way to make it into a real business. And so they're putting limitations on how much per individual and how much per organization.
Thanks, Ed. I do appreciate it. But
so I'll have someone reach out to you.
Yeah, my point is not just me personally, but I'm talking philosophically for faculty members in general.
And I think you can be a great test case.
Hang on one second. So my point is, more in terms of faculty in general, essentially. So this looks like, it's going to be an exponentially growing issue, as time progresses, particularly faculty who have been here longer. So that's the point of view I'm trying to impress, essentially. And by all means, I really appreciate a personal attention, from members in your staff. That would be very helpful. Okay. And then I do realize, looking at our backgrounds, that we are looking at from opposite perspectives of the same background, actually. Jokes aside, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and so Deb, you can serve as our test case, and let us know later on how things worked out, and take this offline because we have a bunch more questions apparently about storage and stuff. So both on on chat as well as NK. Is it okay if Katerina goes first? Okay, Katerina.
I was going to let NK in case he was responding to something.
Okay.
Okay, Ed, you want to highlight the fact that my understanding is that we are going to switch from Google Drive to OneDrive because A&M is already paying for OneDrive. Is that correct?
Well, we pay for both. But we're finding as more and more members of our organizations use things like Microsoft Teams, then having OneDrive available is a very good storage option versus using Google. But no, we don't envision ever shutting off Google unless they price their product at a point we can't afford, which they have the ability to do. But no, we don't envision getting off of one onto the other. We do think, especially for many of our faculty, the use of OneDrive and Teams or products like that from Microsoft makes great sense.
Katerina?
My question, I want to ask it now that Mr. Pearson is here. I noticed that Dr. Widmer's also here and people from Student Success. This semester in the core curriculum, they are assessing oral communication. And this is not orally speaking to the students and assessing whether they understand you. Someone has decreed that we are to collect oral communication from the students. This is in the form of MP3 files or audio files or video files. And so I've built this assignment into Canvas, and I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if Canvas is going to be able to deal with hundreds of students uploading video files into the system. And I don't know how I'm going to get them to the core curriculum people. And it's more about, can we avert this disaster before it happens, because I just know what it's going to be like for students who are trying to upload files to Canvas and it's just not going to work.
Katrina, can you help me with that? And I'll check with Alicia Dorsey, who collects these artifacts through evaluation and effectiveness. Is this for the cultural discourse, or is this for?
No, this is for ICD in the core curriculum. The 4 components are critical thinking, social personal responsibility, and communication. The one element that they're assessing this semester is communication, oral communication, and I see Alicia Dorsey with her hand raised. So there you go.
And just to comment about the YouTube video links, they tend to go away, which has been a huge problem for us. So we need the actual, they stop working very quickly, as students don't always keep their account up to date.
Can I respond to that really quick?
Yeah.
Oral communication. Katrina, actually, Senator Laporte, actually, I've been using this since last year, I think. I do have a small video clip that I asked them exactly for the same oral communication thing. So I have the 300 students in my class, online class, and they do submit it. But as long as the videos are not very long, I have like 5 minutes is what I usually tell them. And it has been working okay in Canvas. They have been submitting it and we have been able to open it and, grade it really well. And I think for the core curriculum assessment, I just dumped all of that in the Google Drive that they gave me. 300, the videos. I don't know who's going to watch it, but we did it.
And if we want to do archival, this might make sense to bring in Bruce Herbert at some point with the Oak Trust. They might be a good place to start thinking about archival videos. Matthew, go ahead.
Thank you. Speaking of Dr. Herbert, I had a little bit of a question. I didn't know if anyone was aware of this. So back in November, we all got an email from the university libraries about the results of our Elsevier agreement. And I was curious if anyone had heard. I went and I reread that email and I viewed the website. And we've had a meeting that's had some issues with web links. There is a link that is apparently broken that reviews the direct impacts to A&M subscribed journals by Elsevier that apparently does not work. I get one of those error 404s. I don't know what, it's amazing how many errors apparently can lead to that you have 404, but there's that. But per the Oak Trust Fund in Dr. Herbert's office, is there anyone here who could speak to whether or not faculty do we still have opportunity to compete for funding to support open access publication? Will those funds be able to be reinstituted, as this was meant to be or described as being a cost savings element? Is there anyone from library administration
We have Krista
that
here.
could discuss that?
Yeah, Krista Oldman looks like she's happy to speak on that right now.
Hey, that'd be great. Thank you.
On both of those things.
I do not have, I am not the person to talk about the Elsevier and whether or not there is option to continue support. Julie, our university librarian, would be the one to answer that. I don't know if others on the call would, but if we're, I was speaking to, if you are interested in doing any sort of archiving as the university archivist, to contact me, and we can work something out on that. But I cannot speak to the other question that was raised.
Okay.
Matt, I can just say briefly about OERs. Yeah, that is something that we are looking a lot into. The system has a high priority for affordability. At the Regents meeting last week, affordability and particularly OERs was a topic. And so system-wide, they're developing a strategy for that. And we're kind of in front of a lot of that. Yeah, we're going to be putting some funding toward it. Tim Scott is leading that as he was with the course redesign kind of program, but money going to faculty or departments to do course conversions, to develop materials. Some of that kind of thing, with also help from the libraries. You heard just now about Julie being involved in that, as the libraries being a resource for developing those materials.
Okay, that's not what I was asking.
Oh, I thought you about OERs and funding.
No. Open resource utilities and OEIs are great. I was talking about the libraries. I am unaware whether or not there is still a source of dollars that faculty can apply to defray the cost of open access research publications. Those dollars used to be there, and annually they were resupplied, and then they were spent out on essentially a first come, first served basis. That used to be, I believe that was overseen by Dr. Herbert's office. And so that was my point. But then my other question was there
Matt, just one second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Helling says that he can speak to that
Okay.
question in the chat.
Cool. All right. I will read that in the chat. Thank you.
So no, Derek, do you want to respond to that first question?
Yeah.
Before Matt continues?
Yeah, howdy everyone. And I can put together something that's more detailed. We are working on many ways. That Oak Fund, I think you're referring to, the $50,000, I think it was, that would help publishing some things. That has kind of been sidelined for now in favor of, because of the Elsevier contract, we realize we're losing access to some things, but we're still wanting to use that into an effective publishing mechanism. We're looking at working some deals with different vendors that will either allow for, one, discounted fees when you publish, or in some cases it will have a certain number of free publishing. And so we can put together a list of that to help share that out. And I know Julie also is pretty much more than willing to go speak to this group if it were wanted, just a little more on some of the stuff going on with the Elsevier contract and so on. But we can put together a communication that will tell exactly what vendors we're looking at working with, how that would work, how you could publish freely for open access results.
All right,
Does
thank you.
Does that help some? Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking about. Thank you so much. The link that is on the website about the overall Elsevier for the journals that were impacted by A&M, I'm having problems. I'm having errors. Just getting to see that. I can see some of it, but that's the one that doesn't seem to pop up. So
great, thank you. And Alicia Dorsey, I saw you pop in and out here. I'm assuming that your whatever you needed has been solved or addressed, mentioned. So if you needed to come up, please put your hand up again. But Andrew, I think you have a bunch of questions in the chat too. Oh, Alicia, let me let Alicia go first because she was in front of you. Go ahead, Alicia. You're muted somehow. You're muted. All right, well, you work on that. I'll have Andrew read some of the questions in the chat.
Actually, this is my question, and it was something that Katrina always asked, but I understand that the DOJ audit has been completed. And I also understand that at least some things, it sounds like, are going to have to come down from the university websites, at least the externally facing websites, due to accessibility, such as the program reviews. And I'm wondering if there's more things like that that are going to disappear from the external views, if the university needs to consider creating an intranet where these things are made available, because I know you can store them in some drive somewhere, but from faculty, often we go to the websites to find these documents because we don't have staff and other things that can easily dig them for us. So I would hate to see, because of accessibility issues, that university transparency kind of goes by the wayside a little bit. Thanks.
Oh, and Alicia wrote in the chat, what she was trying to say is that OIEE has figured out how to secure the audio files and then how to score them. So we believe this is under control, and we'll ask Elizabeth to reach out. Okay, now, Andrew, is there anything in the chat that you would like to bring up?
I think the chat was, most of it has been answered. There's a lot that was in public, not too much that was just directed at me.
Okay, well, any other questions?
Okay, there is one. It's come up. Sorry. I think there's been a question of what actually is the Outlook storage capacity. And there was the other one that was, what is the Google storage capacity? I don't know if Ed's still here or not.
I am. So Google, historically, we've been in the low petabytes, so 2 to 3 petabyte range. They are trying to put pricing in place to come after individual or groups, typically, and depending on how big a contract you have, it can be in the 1 to 1.5 range. We're trying to get sunsetted in or grandfathered into some of their older agreements, but at some point they're a very well-defined profit company and they understand how to price their product. So Microsoft is still, quite frankly, catching up. So they haven't put limitations in terms of pricing the way Google has. And we have a lot more leverage with Microsoft because of the licensing that we do through them. But they'll sell you all the storage you want to buy. It's just a matter, can you afford it?
So, Ed, I think the question was kind of from a faculty perspective, how much free storage space on Outlook do I get?
The OneDrive environment now, if I remember correctly, I think it's a terabyte per individual.
And I think I misspoke. Maybe there's also asking about how much email space they have. Apologies for that.
Okay. So on email, I'm not aware that there's an individual limit. The organization has limits applied to it, but not an individual that I'm aware of.
Well,
but I can go
Google,
double check that. So
and for Gmail, the limits, because I have a personal one and I had to buy an increase at some point. I know that for Gmail, it was your limit was both the combination of your personal drive along with your email. So those were a single thing. So it's probably the same thing with the Outlook.
Yeah, Google looks at both your storage in terms of Google Drive and your storage from Google Mail when they look at you as a individual customer.
And what is the limit per account for the Google per faculty?
It's there right now. I'm not aware that there is a cap per individual faculty member. It's a A&M cap, and then they put on caps that cover, and I have to go get the number for you. I'll get that and report back. But the number is basically similar to the way Microsoft does it. You get a individual terabyte or whatever the number is, and then the A&M has X number of terabytes. Gmail is the same way. I don't know what the individual cap is for email only, but I can go look that up.
Daniel Jimenez added that his email says that his Outlook, that he's used a certain percent of his 99 gig quota.
Right. So once again, I don't, some of those are settings that we make. Some of those are settings that Gmail or Google makes or Outlook makes. Now, they used to be much smaller because, quite frankly, they were worried about performance. And if you start trying to index 2 or 3 or 400,000 messages, it can affect your machine's performance.
Andrew, any more questions?
I don't believe so. I think we've pretty much hit what's in the chat.
Okay, well, I now return the meeting to Speaker Rice. You're muted.
Thank you, Speaker-elect Hammond. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone about the Faculty Senate Coffee Hour that will be this Friday, February 17th in the YMCA Great Hall. Please consider joining us for coffee, danishes, and discussion. So thank you, everyone. At 8 a.m. Is the time. We're there from 8 till 9:30, and sometimes it runs over that amount of time, and often have people stop by, even if it's only for 10 or 15 minutes.
So Dale, can we consider a few coffee hours on a different date on a different time for people who have commitments on Friday mornings for classes or other commitments?
Yeah.
Maybe like a Thursday afternoon or a, you know.
We can certainly talk about doing some alternate times, either you know, in March, trying it on a different day and time. I'm definitely open to that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And Tracy, was there something else you wanted to bring
Yeah,
up?
I just wanted to formally thank Ed for coming on at a moment's notice to answer some questions. So that's greatly appreciated. So
No problem.
I know
Anytime.
that I saw it.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay.
I can do a motion to adjourn if.
Well, I think that will wrap it up, and thank you, everyone. See you next month. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.